The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
In mere months, school boards rewrote how they would teach hundreds of thousands of Ontario students in this COVID-19 crisis. Did students with special education needs get the consideration they required in that effort? We're looking at that tonight. Then, writer Ethan Liu began this pandemic year halfway around the world. He joins us to talk about working his way back to Canada in a most unusual time. It's Tuesday, December 8th, and that's ahead on the agenda. Parents across the province faced tough choices this fall as COVID-19 meant completely different classroom options for their kids, including massive new efforts to allow for online learning. For students with a range of disabilities, that often meant a much steeper learning curve and sometimes very little learning. With us now for more. Near the North Shore of Lake Erie in Simcoe, Ontario, Paula Budis. She is a member of the Special Education Advisory Committee at the Grand Erie District School Board and president of the nonprofit organization Integration Action for Inclusion. She's also mother of 2 elementary students, including one with a disability. In Mississauga, Ontario, Laura Kirby McIntosh, president of the Ontario Autism Coalition, a teacher for 28 years who's currently providing instruction online. She's also a mother of 2 teens who are on the autism spectrum. And from Midtown in the provincial capital, David Lepofsky, chair of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act Alliance. And we are delighted to welcome you 3 onto TVO tonight. I guess I should say, by way of background, we are doing this program in part because once upon a time, a few weeks ago, we did a program on how well the school systems across the province were doing with mostly online learning and some in-classroom instruction. And the lovely and talented Mr. Lepofsky sent me an email that night saying, "Oh my goodness, did you guys get it wrong?" And so we always listen to what Mr. Lepofsky has to say. He's often filled with good advice. And to that end, one of the things he objected to the most were the comments of Ron Felson, who's a superintendent with the Toronto Virtual School, which is the sort of new school for TDSB students who opt into online learning fully, 100%. Let's play a clip from Ron Felson, and then we shall come back and have a discussion of our own. Sheldon, if you would.
We have, as I mentioned, the program for students with developmental disabilities, but we also have programs for students with autism, students with learning disabilities, and we have the resources. We're working with teachers the word was pivot was used earlier. Because the accommodations that are provided in a bricks and mortar school are different in a virtual setting. And so developing those individual education plans for students has been a challenge. But overall, I think our students are benefiting from the virtual environment and learning just as they would be in a bricks and mortar environment.
Okay, David, I'm going to ask you to pick up on the email you sent when you first heard that clip. And to that end, your concern was that we left too rosy an impression of how things are out there. So tell us, how are things from your vantage point out there?
The experience of students with disabilities, who number 1 out of every 6 kids in our publicly funded schools, that's 1/3 of a million students across Ontario, are wildly varying from school to school, board to board, family to family, from those who are functioning okay to those for whom online learning has been a disaster. And there's been a stunning lack of provincial leadership to ensure that things work well. Now, not blaming school boards. They are trying to do what they can in the middle of a crisis pandemic, scrambling in the face of the province being a moving target on what they expect of the provincial school boards. They're all left to reinvent the wheel, these 72 school boards, to figure out what to do. The results have been very troubling from feedback we've received, not from all families, but from a troubling number of families.
Well, let me jump in with a follow-up here, David. When you say it's been a disaster, what constitutes a disaster?
Well, ranging from kids who are functioning well to kids who are really learning little or nothing, or kids whose parents basically have to become their teachers. So in effect, they're paying taxes for school, but they're essentially the family's homeschooling. And the underlying reason is that the province took from day one a one-size-fits-all to distance learning. Here's how it's going to work. And it's designed for students without disabilities. And then when it came to students with disabilities, rather than putting in place the comprehensive plan that we've been asking the provincial government to implement for now 7 or 8 months or longer, they just said to each school board, well, do it this way, use this one-size-fits-all model for distance learning. And by the way, don't forget to accommodate students with disabilities. Well, you need a plan. You don't want to leave it to each of those 72 boards to have to reinvent the wheel, especially in the middle of a crisis.
Okay, let's get Laura Kirby-McIntosh in here. What's your impression of how things are going, Laura?
Well, speaking as an online teacher, I can tell you I'm overwhelmed and exhausted. Even as somebody that's been in the classroom for as long as I have, I can tell you I've never worked harder in my life. This is harder than my first year as a teacher. Both my daughter and I go to the same school, me as a teacher, her as a student, and we're both at home because my husband is on dialysis. But everything feels like it takes longer. Everything feels like it's more complicated. And then, the constant change that keeps happening as the ministry, pivots from one model to another, and then boards scramble to implement. And we had reorganization once a whole bunch of parents realized that class sizes weren't really as small as they were led to expect. And so they switched to online learning. It's been just chaotic and exhausting.
Paula, what's your experience been like so far?
So both as a parent, I can comment that for us, we, made a very deliberate decision to be at home for stability, precisely because we didn't want to be moving between in-class quarantines and back and forth. And having made that decision, we also knew that we would have to fill a lot of gaps and be the support at home for both our kids, actually. One is quite young. So that was a choice we made, recognizing that we were buying stability for that choice. For us, it's worked out okay in that we've had a very good school team working with us who has progressively over time offered us more support at home. But what I can say as the president, particularly of Integration Action for Inclusion, is that the experience is all over the place for families. It is all over in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So some people are getting no supports, no accommodations. Some people are getting some supports. Most people are getting much less support and accommodation than they were accustomed to within the school environment. There are some positives, like less stress in the home environment, potentially less bullying, although I imagine that would be true across any number of students. So it's all over the place.
Okay, let's drill down a little deeper here. And to that end, Laura, I want to get you back in here and without invading your family's privacy too much, but hoping you can go a certain distance to helping us understand where the rubber really hits the road here. Let's just talk about your daughter is what, 18 years old?
Yes.
And she's in grade 12?
She's grade 12 plus, and she got off to a strong start in September, but quickly found, because she's autistic, she needs more processing time. She needs more time to take in what she's learning and more time to do her assignments. And the condensed nature of the quadmester model at the high school level was too much. So there were a lot of tears of frustration. But once we got her dropped down to only one course at a time, things started to get better for her. But she's not getting the same level of support that she would inside the school building.
And
certainly.
Let's understand as well, does she do a mix of going into school some days and some online?
No, she's exclusively online.
Okay, and has the school accommodated for the fact that she may be learning differently than other students?
I would say only insofar as they've allowed her to drop down and just take one class at a time instead of two. Other than that, I mean, she's not a student that requires a great deal of accommodation, but the model is so condensed now that, like, if she needs an extension, if she needs extra time for an assignment, it's difficult for teachers to give that. So that's the main challenge she's faced. But what I'm hearing from other parents in the Autism Coalition community is quite different. So her experience hasn't been too bad, but there are some families for whom it's been downright awful.
Well, I wonder if part of the reason why her experience hasn't been too bad is that she's got a mother who's been teaching for almost 3 decades who can help.
That it certainly, it doesn't hurt. I mean, hey, being a teacher's kid is good in some ways and not so good in other ways. But yeah, definitely, I can help her out. I can help her navigate the system and help her manage her deadlines and so on. But it's been challenging. And I mean, even though she's 18 and in grade 12, one of the things that's difficult is that parent-child relationship. And when you add teacher into the equation, it complicates things. And I think for a lot of parents, there's a line that they've never had to cross before in terms of becoming their child's teacher, in effect. And crossing that line is not always comfortable.
Now, David, I guess one of the areas I want to drill down with you is the notion that when we talk about students who have special needs or have distinctive ways of learning and so on, this is a pretty broad panoply we're talking about here. I mean, you happen to be visually impaired. There may be other students who are physically challenged. There may be other students on an autism spectrum. There's a wide variety of disabilities at play here. Has the province come up with a kind of a one solution ought to work well for everybody? And if so, how well is that working?
Well, no, what we've learned over and over is if you're going to run an education system or any other system, a healthcare system, and you're going to make major changes like they've had to make because of COVID, and we understand why they had to move to distance learning in the spring, of course, and maintain it in the fall, you can't assume that it's automatically going to meet the needs of students with disabilities. They all have individual needs, and therefore you need a plan to address their recurring needs, because a blind kid in Kenora is the same as a blind kid in Cornwall. A deaf kid in London is going to be the same as a deaf kid in Ottawa. You want to find out what strategies work for them and mandate the range of options around the province. There's a lot of teachers and principals and parents coming up with creative ideas, but unless the province gathers them up, shares them around, and mandates measures to ensure that people don't face barriers, then they're all going to have to keep recreating the same thing. And in the middle of this exhausting world that Laura said distance teachers are facing, that's a formula for disaster, and that's exactly how the province is handling it. They're just leaving it to each school board. So what you need to do, and what the province was told they need to do, is to do 2 things. Actually, 3 things. First, they need to create a comprehensive plan for all the school boards so they don't have to, as I said, reinvent the wheel. They haven't done that. The second is they need to put into effect at the Ministry of Education a students with disabilities command table. They've got a health table. They've got other tables. They need a command table for students with disabilities. We're talking about 1/3 of a million. As I said, 1 out of every 6 kids. We know there's a systemic problem, and it should be staffed by people with expertise in educating students with disabilities. And they should be designing the plan, running the plan, and quick response to fix when problems inevitably are going to arise. They haven't done that. The third thing they need to do, and this is absolutely pivotal, is the province needs to ensure that school boards are reaching out, or the province itself, to parents to find out what's actually happening. Not just what are school boards saying they're doing, what are parents actually experiencing, and what are kids with disabilities experiencing? Because if they are having the kind of problems that we've been getting in terms of feedback we've received, they need to know that now and to fix it. Well, the province hasn't done that either. I was on, just one last point, Steve, I'm on the Special Education Advisory Committee for Toronto District School Board, the largest school board in Canada. And last night we had a meeting, and 2 months ago, I think, or 3 months ago, I suggested they need to reach out to parents of students with disabilities that they serve to find out how are things working. Not only haven't they done that, they're just still thinking about how to do that. Now, frankly, that's something the province should have mandated long ago, rather than being in the middle of the school year and having a discussion about, shucks, how might we do this?
Well, to that end, I think, Paula, you're in the midst of a survey of parents that you know right now, right? Tell us a little bit about not only the size of the survey, but what you're hearing.
So, I mean, we are doing our best to reach out to families, but we are not a school board. We are not the ministry. So, Facebook groups, Twitter, and trickling in slowly but surely, answers are coming. And it is, I think, I can't echo enough David's comments around the need for the boards to be reaching out and for the province to have mandated this, to have allowed for a platform. Listen, it's difficult in the best of times for families with disabilities to convey experiences. I would say there are not very many good ways that boards do that anyway. But even now, it is even worse, and the folks just don't have the feedback that they need. So the comments we've been hearing, some of which are, it's exhausting for the students. Parents are having to do curricular development in some cases. I'm sure it happens quite a bit from distance learning. There's no adaptation of materials. For some families, please understand, this was not an option. Their kids are very medically fragile, and so they are home. And whatever happens educationally. Maybe those parents can fill the gaps, and maybe they can't. There's definitely significant concerns around support, and a large number of people have indicated.
Well, we did ask the
minister.
We did ask the Minister of Education for a comment about this, and we did hear back from his spokesperson, whose name is Caitlin Clark, and she had this to say. She said, "We are proud to lead the nation in COVID-19 school reopening funding. $42 million of this additional funding was specifically dedicated to supporting students with special education needs and mental health supports in the classroom. We are spending more money than any other province on special education. In order to further support these students, we have directed boards to ensure that students with special needs can be at school 5 days a week." Okay, let's get some feedback on that. Laura, how does that sound to you?
It sounds like a comment coming from a Liberal or a New Democratic government in terms of bragging about how much money they've spent, as though that is the measure of how much they care. I can tell you as a frontline teacher, the difficulty, of course, is that on the ground, we don't really see those investments making a difference in our classroom on a day-to-day basis. I'm hearing from parents of kids with high needs on the spectrum who are getting a total of 25 minutes per week of support from an education assistant. The rest of the time, they have to be there beside their kid at the computer, giving them one-on-one support. I've heard of a single mom who's working from home who has 2 kids on the spectrum, both of whom need one-on-one support, and saying, I'm one person. Like, how can I do this? It's not just about the money. It's about reducing the level of chaos and uncertainty in the system, and allowing for some sort of consistency. And I mean, for kids with autism, routine is really important. But we've seen, pivoting from one model to the other. We've seen timetables being overhauled, and we've seen much more school and community transmission during this pandemic than anybody really wanted to.
Laura, can I follow up with you with this notion? Many students in the province of Ontario who have disabilities have something called an IEP, an individual or individualized education plan. And these plans, obviously are supposed to be in place and are supposed to be helpful to each individual child's ability to put a program together and learn specific to their needs. How's that going on right now?
Well, the problem with IEPs right now is the same as it was before the pandemic. There's no enforcement. There's no follow-up. If you ask me in my career how many times I've had the supervisor ask me, are you following so-and-so's IEP? The answer would be 0. So enforcement of those IEPs is left entirely up to either the individual students to advocate for themselves or their parents. So if a child is guaranteed extra time, for instance, on a test in their IEP, if they're supposed to have accommodations for their sensory needs, if they're supposed to have movement breaks and so on. How do you do a movement break in an online learning environment? I mean, part of the problem is we're asking a lot of kids to sit down and stare at a computer screen for 225 minutes a day. For a lot of students with disabilities, that's just not possible.
Paula, let me make you the same deal that I made Laura a few minutes ago, which is to ask you a bit about your own personal circumstances. But again, tell us as much or as little as you want to, and we're happy to respect your privacy as you see fit. You had the option, I gather, of in-person classes with one of your kids, but I gather you have opted for 100% online. Is that right?
We have. There isn't an option for an in-between. We have a virtual board as well. And for us, like I said, there were two drivers actually. One, we weren't convinced that our daughter would be able to follow all the safety protocols. And once you have those conflicts in a classroom, you're always worried as a parent that there's going to be creating conflicts between you and other families, and the board put in a position of trying to manage that. That was one issue. The other issue is just the stability. We couldn't pivot every few months in home, at school, back and forth. Both of us, my husband and I, have the privilege of working at home and making it work, and working a little bit less if we need to support our kids. So we were able to access that privilege. There are families who have to make that choice, notwithstanding they don't have that privilege because of the significant health concerns, especially in hotspots. And that's happening too. And so while the provinces, put whatever money they've put forward, a lot of this is about planning, it's about enforcement, and it's about consistency, and it's about helping the school boards not have to reinvent the wheel for all 72 of the school boards. And they didn't do that. And that's why we have this wildly different approach and systems and options and accessibility concerns. It's working for some kids because the school team and the staff are on it, and other kids not so much. It's actually consistent. This is the way it is before COVID. Now it's just even more chaotic.
But if I'm reading between the lines here, it sounds like you are doing a lot of backstopping and teaching of your child as well. Is that right?
Oh, we have to. I mean, if it were not for having me and my husband, so there's two of us and there's two children, and one of us is primarily responsible for the one and the other is primarily responsible for the other. But we get a lot of help too. Like, even with the amount of effort and energy that we're putting into it, we just had a neighbor offer to volunteer, who's a teacher, to help us half an hour a day. And then we do have some support from the school as well. As I said, it's ramping up. I think we're unusual in the level of support we're getting, to be completely honest. So, and even still, we are doing a lot, and some days are better than others.
David, I want you to give us some information as it relates to the situation with educational assistance, because many students with disabilities, when they go to school and are in the classroom, they do have one-on-one EAs helping them. Obviously, if they're staying home and they're doing all of their education online, presumably that is not there for them. So how's that working itself out?
Well, three things. First, it depends on what people work out locally, because here again, there's no provincial direction and standards on what needs to be done. Some have come up with ways to have the EA either on the phone when the student's in front of their iPad, and for some that will work. For some it won't work, or it's not offered. Or if the parents don't know how to advocate for it, because not all parents have the skill set that people like Laura and Paula have at doing this kind of uphill battle advocacy. The second thing is, here again, we don't know what's going on across the province because the province hasn't asked parents to find out. And the third thing is that answer from Stephen Lecce, the Minister of Education's office, about funding is deeply disturbing and emblematic of their failure. When asked about this, they don't say we've got a plan, or we've got a plan to create a plan, or we have people in charge who actually know what they're doing when it comes to education for students with disabilities. No, they just do the Santa Claus thing. Look at all the money we've given out. Well, $42 million divided by 1/3 of a million kids is a grand total of about $140 a kid. That doesn't buy you a whole lot, but in a lot of ways, Steve, this isn't even about money. The fact is, the provincial blundering is costing us money. If the province came up with solutions and mandated them across the board as they were repeatedly advised to do for students with disabilities, they would be saving school boards the cost of having to each figure out, how do we do EAs online? They wouldn't know that. I'll give you another example. Right now, look at students who are blind or low vision. For one thing, the online resources that are provided, forgive me, by TVO, to which the government points, have huge accessibility problems. I pointed this out on your program 7 months ago. It appears that nothing has been done to fix them. And certainly we haven't seen anything. We haven't heard anything. And I was just on the site this morning and stumbled within about a minute into accessibility problems. So kids with vision loss, as well as dyslexic kids, are going to have trouble using them. Some teachers of the visually impaired have invented some ways to help a visually impaired student at home with online learning, but there's no provincial oversight to make sure that visually impaired students across the province get a proper number of hours of supportive teachers of visually impaired. The province doesn't know where those visually impaired students are, how many there really are, doesn't know how many teachers of visually impaired there are at each board, doesn't know how many hours a week they're getting. And the feedback is that it varies, again, dramatically, from some getting great support invented locally to some getting little or no support. And the province, mindful of this because they've been told, sits back and does absolutely nothing. And it's really this far into the pandemic inexcusable.
Well, you say inexcusable. Let me do a quick follow-up with you here. And just, to put on the record here, TVO is one of the largest suppliers of online learning in the province. And I know you are not putting me in the position of having to defend TVO. And frankly, I don't feel any obligation to defend TVO. The record is whatever the record is. But I am curious as to what you think the explanation is for the fact that so little progress has been made, in your view, in this area.
Bad provincial leadership. The province claims, they hold press conferences earlier this year to say we are leading by example on accessibility, and then we find out that the educational public broadcaster that the province owns, operates, and has leadership for, not only did nothing about this before the pandemic, but when I spoke after my last appearance on your show with the vice president for digital content and said, you need a plan to fix this, and she agreed and said she'd let me know when they've got one. I haven't heard a word back since. Had the same conversation with the minister, the deputy minister of education, and again, nothing from them. By the way, the ministry's own online educational resources also still have accessibility problems months after we pointed out that problem to them. They're just not taking this in the way that they, with the seriousness that they ought.
Laura, I want to come back to you on the issue of online versus in-classroom learning. Is it fair to say that, no matter how much you spent or how hard you tried, and I'm not saying they are, but just if, this is a hypothetical, there are some students for whom online just isn't going to work. And in that case, what do we do about them?
Absolutely. Clearly online learning works for some students, but you're right. There are some kids that simply cannot adapt to this model. They can't sit still and attend to a computer. The sensory overload of hearing multiple voices at the same time, the visual overstimulation. There's definitely a lot of kids for whom this isn't working. And I've spoken to some parents who have, with reluctance, just given up because it's not worth the battle and the tears and the frustration of trying to drag their kids through every day. In terms of solutions, we're going to have to look outside Ontario, I think, for other ideas and suggestions. I know the UK has just brought in something interesting with hiring a bunch of tutors. But it's really complicated. And I mean, teaching online and teaching in person are two totally different experiences. And now, of course, we have this in many boards, this strange hybrid model that's being introduced where teachers are in a classroom with several students who are physically present, and then they're simultaneously supposed to be teaching students who are online. It's just not workable. And it's kids with disabilities who are going to fall through the cracks the most in that model. I spoke with a teacher this week who said that there was an autistic kid in her classroom who was incredibly frustrated because he'd been trying to get her attention for half an hour. He was online and he was putting things in the chat, but the computer's at the back of the room and she couldn't see. And that led to a whole meltdown and a whole series of frustrations. So it's, I mean, the hybrid model baffles me to begin with. I mean, it's like asking a teacher, here's the best analogy. It's saying play in this basketball game in this court and simultaneously coach that basketball game that's going on in the court next door. Nobody in that model is really getting the optimal educational experience. So I'm not sure whether there's a fix here at all.
Well, Paula, let me try this with you. If you get to the end of the year, and not just when I say you, I don't mean you specifically, but parents with children with disabilities, if they discover that the year's essentially been a write-off, do you think it makes more sense to essentially give those kids an F, flunk them, and have them do the year over, presumably a year from now, when things are less dire and maybe back to the way they more normally are? How's that as an option?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer. There is a body of evidence out there that indicates that holding kids back when they don't do well has other implications on social and emotional learning. And there are certainly lots of families who would like to hold their kids back. I'm not sure that holding a child back is the right thing to do as opposed to providing additional supports. We also have a very big sense around things have to be done and understood by a certain time, or that's it, it's over. There are families, including my own. My parents lost 3 entire years of their education as children during the Second World War. They managed to catch up. They managed to get through high school and have them live productive lives. So I personally don't love the idea of being chained to a schedule. And certainly students with disabilities need some, and typically are in the system, depending on the nature of their disability, longer than your average student anyway. So I don't know that I want people to panic around that, but I do think that the government will have to do something to measure the gap. They will have to do something to provide additional resources for those students who basically lost a year. I don't know why that's even a question, in the sense that it's very obvious that typical learners will find themselves potentially in that space as well. And so the government needs to really measure that.
David, I literally have 20 seconds left for you to answer this question. You want a plan for all school boards. You want a command table for students with disabilities at Queen's Park. You want more reaching out to parents. Presumably you've put that to the Minister of Education. What'd you get back?
Silence and look at all the money we're spending. But for parents who are watching this, I want to just let them know, if you've got a child with a disability, I've created an online video that will give you tips on how to advocate for your child in the middle of this. Go to YouTube and just search on tips for parents of students with disabilities, and I hope those tips will help. And meanwhile, the Minister of Education on the 8th of July proudly said during question for period, I quite often speak to David Lepofsky. Well, since then, I haven't heard a word from him, and he's not answered any emails, letters, and I've been asking for a meeting. And
well, keep us posted on that, okay, David? Let us know.
Taking a listen.
Yeah, let us know. Keep us posted. That's David Lepofsky, along with Laura Kirby-McIntosh and Paula Budis. We're really glad you could all join us on TVO tonight. Many thanks.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Last January, as most of us were blithely going about our lives, journalist Ethan Liu was visiting his aging grandfather in Beijing, China. What would follow was both unexpected and, it turns out, a vastly spreading global crisis. As he found his way back to Canada, Ethan Liu wrote Field Notes from a Pandemic, a journey through a world suspended. And he joins us now from the downtown core of the provincial capital with more. Ethan, so nice to meet you. How you doing?
I am well. Thank you for having me, Steve.
Not at all. I want you to set this story up for us, if you would. Take us back to Beijing in January. When you got there, what did you find?
So the book begins right in the thick of it. And when I left Toronto, there was no pandemic. But while I was in the air, cut off from the world, that was when the epicenter city of Wuhan was sealed off. So I arrived into just a totally different world. And if you can picture this, there's a long barrier after the baggage claim exit. So there's a long line of people just leaning on the barrier. They are the friends and family waiting to receive the travelers. And they're all looking at the people coming out. And every single one of them was just in a mask. And this was before we all started wearing masks. So it looked very jarring. It was like a scene out of V for Vendetta, a sea of faceless faces. And to think just 14 hours ago, I entered the plane in a normal world, and I just exited to plague. And the book details just how everything escalated from there.
You had one of those moments where you thought to yourself, Dorothy, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, if I can steal a line from another good story. Well, all right, take us then you go to visit your grandfather, which was the point of the visit in the first place. How many times did you get in to see him before things changed?
Oh, just twice. And I felt very lucky that I was able to see him twice. And the first time, it wasn't even a real visit. It was half a visit. And so the reason for going to China was that he hadn't been in particularly good health. Throughout 2019, there came a time when my father told me in these exact words to prepare a dark suit. So despite everything, I feel lucky to have went to China when I did. Because while I was there on the second visit, I don't think I got even like a full hour in when I was literally kicked out of the residence, because that was when the residents started banning all the visitors. And while my grandfather has quite severe dementia, I feel there's a baser part of the brain that took in the raw elements of the pandemic. I'm sure he could feel the tension in people's voices, the somberness of the TV. He could feel the cold emptiness of the room. So I was holding his hand as I was getting ejected, and as I was letting go, he was just holding on with all the strength that he could muster.
That's very sweet, and I presume he didn't quite understand what was happening at that moment?
Not at all, and he's increasingly not verbal. There used to be a time when I think just a year ago he still had the strength to sit in a wheelchair, but he doesn't even have that now.
How ticked off were you that you had traveled halfway around the world for what you hoped would be, multiple visits to go see your grandfather, and then basically after 1.5, it's over?
Yeah, I was pretty ticked off, but I tried to look on the bright side that I still managed to see him for what is quite likely the last time, because of all the travel restrictions now. Yeah, I'm glad that I went there when I did.
Now, unlike the rest of us in the province of Ontario, who really didn't, I think, understand the magnitude of this thing till midway through March, you were right there at the beginning. So how does your understanding of this pandemic, because of that, and not at ground zero, but pretty close to ground zero as well, how does your understanding of this pandemic differ from the rest of us then, because you've experienced it right from the start?
Yeah, it was definitely a jarring sight to see China back then. The virus spiraled forth from Wuhan really quickly, and very quickly the entire country went into lockdown. But I would say that back then I didn't think it was going to be like this, and I don't think many people thought that way. And even when I left China, I felt very relieved that I was leaving it all behind. I did not expect the plague to just follow me. I would just look over my shoulder to see that it just dogging me like a shadow. And a great part of my book deals with how I feel there's a collective blind spot on the part of everyone, that back in the early days, I think if more was done back then, we would not be in this situation right now.
Well, I should follow up on that. How much confidence did you have in Chinese authorities to be able to sort of nip this thing in the bud?
That is a good question, because I think that there are lots of people saying that because of how authoritarian China is, it's able to clamp down so quickly, and therefore it's so efficient at stemming the spread of the virus. And you know, people say that there is some merit to that system there, and there's a failure of democracy here. But also, when you look at it, the reason it had able to spread so much in China, it was also because of how authoritarian it is, because China itself admits this. At the beginning, local officials tried to cover the matter up. And why did they try to cover the matter up? It's because China punishes corruption really heavily. You can get the death penalty for corruption, and that is not where you can expect a fair day in court. And I'm sure the local officials, they were more scared. They were more afraid of the wrath of their bosses than the actual plague. And that cost the world dearly, because there's a study that shows that if China were to have acted quickly right from the start, it would have prevented 95% of all the infections.
Well, I mean, we know it in the West because of our relatively free media, but I wonder at what point you found out that the doctor that tried to blow the whistle on all of this and who was silenced by Chinese authorities and then who eventually went back to help and died of this virus, when did you find out about all of that?
Well, I had a VPN, so I was in China. I was still reading Western media, and honestly, I wasn't paying much attention to Chinese media, so I found out as when everyone else found out. But I don't think it made Chinese media for a really long time.
Yeah. I got to tell you, one of the most, one of the things from your book that is really going to stay with me are those signs that you saw as you were trying to, and you're smiling already because you know what I'm going to get to here. They really are very blunt in some of the language they use with the signs in the subway system, for example. And we're going to bring up a few photos here which show this. And maybe you can translate some of the language here. This is a virus warning, I gather, which reads, "Eliminate the poison." We'll go on and show some more that are even blunter than this. But how do people react when they see these, you know, very, very stark messages from their government?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of this starkness, it has to do with how the Chinese language is. It's a very literal language. And so, you know, when we say in English to disinfect, in Chinese, it literally means to just eliminate the poison. And lots of words all sound really harsh in Chinese. For example, marijuana, the word for marijuana in Chinese is really harsh. It's like big numbness. And so, yeah, I think definitely we probably view this to be quite funny, but it's a pretty normal saying in Chinese.
Well, there's another slogan here that it says, if today you go outside to run around, next year on your grave, growing grass will be found. Again, you know, not the kind of message we'd hear from Doug Ford in the province of Ontario, but do you think these kinds of signs are effective?
That's a good question. I think the signs are that they are a superficial thing, and they are funny, and it probably spreads widely because they are funny. But I think ultimately, what is effective, what is or isn't effective, is not so much the message you dress it up with, but really what is the action underlying it.
I know the first time I hopped on a subway here in Toronto and there was nobody on it, it was a very eerie experience. What was yours like when you saw that in Beijing?
Mm-hmm. So I before the pandemic, at least, I would go to China quite often, and I have never been able to get a seat on the Beijing subway. And I've taken it all sorts of different times, but that's just the way it is. It's super crowded, and I have never seen it so empty like that. And it was definitely jarring, and yeah, it was quite eerie in a way. There was like a nothingness in the air that also felt very heavy.
You feel like you're in a ghost town?
Yeah, it's like walking through a movie set. So afterward, I spent some time just walking in the Beijing downtown, and there was almost nobody there, and you can see that because it was snowing, and most places the snow was just an unblemished film.
Sheldon, I'm going to just ask our director, Sheldon Osmond. I think we got one more picture. Yes, there it is. There's Ethan at the airport. And Ethan, here you're leaving Beijing to go to Singapore, where your parents live. That's a fairly different looking mask from what we're used to seeing. What's going on there?
So that is a respiratory mask. So back then I didn't know this, but now I think it was in August the CDC of the US, they put out this directive that these masks, you actually shouldn't be wearing them because they protect you more so than other people, because the air goes in and out of it, only goes in and out of the vent. But for me it felt it was more comfortable than a surgical mask, because the air that I exhale doesn't go out the top to fog up the glasses. It was deemed a superior mask, and that was my uncle in Beijing. That was his last such mask, and he gave it to me. So I felt that was a good gesture.
Having said that, Ethan, as you left China, did you get the sense that I'm trying to stay one step ahead of this virus here? Did that occur to you?
Mm-hmm. So leaving China was definitely an experience, as I write in the book. There was absolute chaos and pandemonium at the airport. It was at the very beginning of February, and I was actually supposed to be in Hong Kong before Singapore, but I think just a day or two before I left, Hong Kong started quarantining all people who arrived from the mainland. And it hadn't taken effect yet, but all sorts of flights were cancelled. And I only found out at the airport. And I think there were many others like me. They had flights to all sorts of places and they didn't know they were cancelled. It was a long queue snaking outside the Air China counter, and there were people crying and just absolute chaos. Yeah.
Now, we've had lots of comparisons, of course, by experts to the Spanish flu of 100 years ago. But, I mean, let's go back 400 years to the Middle Ages and the bubonic plague that devastated the United Kingdom. Compare and contrast, if you would. What's similar, what's different among these different global pandemics?
Mm-hmm. I think clearly biologically they're all different, but I think we should look past that. And what I find very interesting about these plagues, and what I write in the book, is that past pandemics, in a way, they have shaped the modern world. And you know, you hear this often that the word quarantine, it comes from quarantagioni, the Italian word for 40 days, but it goes beyond that. There used to be a time when medieval governments, they didn't really have a big role in their people's lives. All they did was, one, collect taxes, and two, if they went to war, they came and conscripted the men. But it was because of plagues that they started having a bigger role in their citizens' lives. When they started to take charge of their borders, when they started to haul people off for quarantine, when they started to track the health of their people. And all of this, they began as temporary health agencies. They eventually became permanent, and they temporarily guarded their borders. Eventually, that became permanent as well. So this idea of the state as an institution, it came from that, and also from the point of view of the citizen. They started to have a greater expectation for the role of the government in their lives. And we've seen that all throughout history. During the Plague of London, that was when classical liberalism was born. That was when there came about this idea that that life is harsh and the state has an obligation to take care of the people. And I think from that we have this idea of the modern state. Typhoid and cholera in the 19th century, it gave birth to urban planning. And I think if we look in our past, we can definitely see future and where we are going from this. We will definitely see a bigger role of the government in people's lives.
Let me follow up on what you just said by reading an excerpt from your book. Let's call this Pandemic Legacies. And Sheldon, if you would, let's bring this graphic up. Such is the power, you write, of a great plague. Typhoid supposedly smoothed the conquering path of certain conquistadors. Measles or smallpox is said to have contributed to the fall of the Roman Empire. The bubonic plague was speculated to have done the same to its successor, the Byzantine Empire. Infectious diseases throughout history, scholars, media, and historians say, have crushed revolutions, sparked socioeconomic reform, tipped the scales of wars, and reshaped how entire countries viewed religion. Beyond their death tolls, every plague has left a lasting legacy. We live in a world defined by past pandemics. That is a really fascinating observation, Ethan, and I wonder what you think the overwhelming legacy of this pandemic is going to be.
So I think with every crisis, the world gets remade, and with every crisis, the governmental arm grows bigger. And I think just as how the plagues of the past, they have redefined the way people view the role of the state. And I think this pandemic, it is going to have the same effect. And I think one great example, I think, is CERB, the federal government's income support. That was pretty unprecedented, and it had already sparked calls to make that permanent and for things like universal basic income. And if you look at the throne speech recently, that I think that was a significant leftward lurch by the Liberals. And I think through all of this, we might have a greater expectation for the state in our lives, and possibly an evolution to a more progressive society.
Or conversely, should we look at the other side of the coin and ask you whether you think there are any governments or countries that will not survive this pandemic?
I think a great example, as I write in the book, is Nigeria. It hasn't been doing well before the pandemic. It's combating all sorts of strife within the country, all sorts of rebels. The central government does not have a lot of control. It's been battling the Boko Haram insurgency for a long time, and also its economy is so dependent on oil. I think. And oil is one of those things affected disproportionately by the pandemic. And so it hit the country at possibly the worst time. It's going broke at a time of such a significant crisis. And I think that there are many countries in the world like that, where the central government, it already doesn't have a lot of control. And now when you hit it with the plague, it's all going to become worse. But I would see that as temporary, because it is precisely that sort of chaos that make people crave bigger government. And so in those countries, developments, they will take probably a more twisted path than industrialized countries. But I think eventually they will go toward the same end.
You know, there have been plenty of people for many, many years who have been predicting the end of the ruling Communist Party in China for other reasons not related to a coronavirus pandemic. But now this one is here. Do you think that this could influence the hastening, shall we say, of the end of the Communist Party's rule of China?
I would actually argue the opposite. And yes, people have been saying, they've been writing about the collapse of the Communist Party, and for a long time. I think it got to a peak in like 2015, and it didn't really happen. But I think through this pandemic, China it's doing all it can to take advantage of it. As I write in the book, it's stepping up all sorts of disinformation campaigns, and it is also restarting its economy as others are shutting theirs down. And China was hit by this badly, but it was hit first and it recovered first. And sources on the ground, they say that they see this pandemic as an opportunity to leapfrog industrially. And on the world stage, you see China trying to to eclipse the United States as the leader of the world, at least image-wise. There's been this great face mask diplomacy. China is giving all sorts of aid everywhere as the U.S. pulls back. And I know there's a saying about how you shouldn't look certain animals in the mouth when they are given to you as gifts, but the Trojans should have looked the horse in the mouth, or else, if they did that, they'll still be alive. And it's not to say that there are problems with the equipment China's been giving out, but it's very clearly using it as a PR moment to try to eclipse the United States, which, as you know, it has pulled funding from the WHO. And while it did that, China stepped right up.
Ethan, we're literally down to our last 30 seconds here, and I should just ask you about, we were doing okay for a while there. In the province of Ontario, we were down to 100 positive cases a week, and now we're going back up. We're at 1,500 this not too long ago, and everybody's worried about where this second wave is ultimately going to take us. Where do you see it going?
Mm-hmm. I think we see in this definitely a deficit of federal will, and I definitely think that there needs to be a national response to this. But we have 10 provinces, and health is a provincial jurisdiction, and everyone is doing something differently. And I know that Justin Trudeau, he is not Doug Ford's dad, he is not Scott Moe's dad, and there is a reason we decentralize our the power structure. There is a reason certain things are provincial jurisdictions, but when our system is so fragmented this way, I think the response is definitely lethargic. And I think without a coordinated national response, I think everything's going to get worse.
Well, you've had a very fascinating last 11 months of your life, and you chronicle it all in Field Notes from a Pandemic, a Journey Through a World Suspended. And we're glad that it's brought you, Ethan Liu, to our studio, virtually anyway, tonight here on TVO. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And that is the agenda for Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. Even though it's been a strange, unpredictable year, tomorrow we're following a long tradition here on the agenda. It's our annual music show. So we'll hear about Sinatra songwriter Ruth Lowe, talk to Juno-nominated singer M. Greiner, and check in on quiet times at renowned music venue, the Jazz Bistro. Hope you can stop by for all of that. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.